Hello again. This is episode 3 in my little series of videos for newcomers to Jeti, how to get started with setting up the transmitter. If you've stumbled across this one for the first time, then I'd suggest you have a hunt for episode 1 of Jeti for newcomers getting started. If you've found I've got a lot of videos and you're a newcomer, don't worry. Most of my videos deal with much more complicated programming. But I've got plenty of series about how to run the telemetry systems, how to run gyros with Jeti, how to use Jeti's own gyro menus, how to run the assists, how to set things up as well. So do have a look through my channel. There will be a subscribe button at the end of this video for you to have a look at them all. Right, we've already dealt with really much of the system menu and the configuration. So this time, instead of the system menu, I'm going to just talk a little bit about applications so you can understand what's going on. We've got these in applications. You may or may not have user applications. If you're running one of Jeti's transmitters without the Lua version of the software, you won't see user applications, I don't think. So data analyzer is somewhere that you can look at graphs on screen of the telemetry data that you have logged. You choose the parameter you want to look at. For instance, in this one, I've been looking at the altitude and data quality from a Vario and from the receiver. You choose your log files, and you can go in and look at graphs of what's going on. If you really want to understand this, it's covered in one of my episodes about using the telemetry system. Very handy little feature. Audio player, exactly what it sounds like. Choose that, go into audio, and I only have EN for English because I removed all the other languages from the card. You might find here there's lots of subfolders with languages. There's a few files down here that are more system files, but in audio folder, EN folder, or your language folder is where you find all the main stuff that you can assign to switches, alarms, that kind of thing. And you can choose one and you can press the play button.
0, 1, 10, 10 minutes.
Off it goes. Stop it there. It'll run through the whole thing. In the audio player, there's a handy little thing here where you can get it to speak out a whole sequence of files, for instance, as a sort of electronic caller for the schedule that you're trying to fly. And again, that's covered in another of my videos about the automatic caller. Okey-doke. Jeti box. Right. This is a source of huge confusion to people who are thinking of buying Jeti. Indeed, it caused me a lot of confusion when I was considering buying Jeti, because when I looked through the instruction manuals before, making my final decision, things like the receivers and such like, and the transmitter stuff, the first thing they do is talk about hooking your receivers and telemetry sensors up to Jeti box, and it goes through pages and pages of how to set things up using Jeti box. And then at the end of it, oh, and by the way, you can use Device Explorer. And I kind of got half convinced that I was going to have to buy a Jeti box. A Jeti box is a little device with a screen on it and some programming buttons, and you plug it into your receivers, to your telemetry sensors, whatever, and scroll through its menus to set up the receiver and devices. But it's a legacy system. It comes from the days when Jeti made modules, not transmitters. Now that they make transmitters, the transmitter can talk to these systems directly. But some of the older devices, the older telemetry sensors, still cannot talk directly to the transmitter through the modern software, which is Device Explorer. And so Jeti put this Jeti box emulator onto your transmitter, so you can go in and you can talk to the settings in some of the older style sensors, etc. There are new style, in fact very new sensors and telemetry stuff that still only use Jeti box if they are not true EX bus systems. They may say EX on them, but they're not EX bus. And it's a very important differentiation. Now, it's not made clear by the fact that something is EX or EX bus. For instance, the Zikoi telemetry adapter for turbines that use a Zikoi ECU is not an EX bus device. Therefore, it does not appear in Device Explorer, which would be the nice modern way to do it. It appears only in Jeti Box. I'm not a fan of Jeti Box at all. It's a clunky old system. But there you go. You do not need to buy a Jeti Box, except for one very specialist application, which it's unlikely that you should need, should you have cloned a receiver. And I think the only way you can get it out is Jeti Box. Someone told me you can reflash the firmware and that would do it, but I'm not going to try it and test it. But anyway, you go into Jeti Box and you can get into some older stuff that doesn't appear in Device Explorer. Games, yeah, there's some games in there if you want to play that. And user applications will list any Lua applications that you have installed on the transmitter. Doesn't mean that you're running them in a particular model, it's just that they are now on the memory card and available for use. Okie doke. So that's the apps. Where have we got to? 6 minutes. Okay. I'm going to come back in episode 4 with a run through of the basics of the bit that's really interesting. In other words, setting up a new model. Okay, doke. So we'll see you in Epi 4.